والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ask Huda. I'm your host, Jamil Rashid. We have with us Sheikh Muhammad Salah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Sheikh, how are you
doing? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, this is a very special edition again. No telephone calls today. We're not going to be taking any of your calls. So please do not ring in. You won't be entertained today. We're going to go through some of the emails and some of the questions that are piled up from before. So please do not telephone us. If you want to send us an email, our email address is ask@huda.tv. Okay, Sheikh, the first question I have is regarding a widow who wants to make Hajj. She's in a idda period. She wants to make Hajj with a mahram. Is this allowed, Sheikh?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyihi Mustafa. All praise due to Allah, who praise Him and who seek His help. I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is His last messenger. First of all, I extend my condolence to the sister, and may Allah have mercy on her husband. While a woman is in her iddah of the death of her husband, that's a very special iddah and mourning period, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated that it is 4 months and 10 days, saying في سورة البقرة وَالَّذِينَ يُتَوَفَّوْنَ مِنْكُمْ وَيَذَرُونَ أَزْوَاجًا يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ أَرْبَعَةَ أَشْهُرٍ وَعَشْرًا 4 months and 10 days. Accordingly, the mourning period for a widow is 4 months and 10 days. And it is prohibited for a woman who lost her husband to leave her house, the home of her husband, when they were living together during their marriage. She must spend this entire time, 4 months and 10 days, at home. And she would only leave due to a necessity, such as something that she needs to buy and she doesn't have somebody to serve her, and so on. But traveling for Hajj or Umrah, even if she has the male mahram, she is not permitted to travel during the iddah period.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, we've got a question from a brother regarding traveling to Saudi to make Hajj, but stopping off in Egypt, for example. He's on transit now. He wants to know, where does he make his miqat? Where does he put on the ihram?
The Prophet ﷺ appointed certain points as al-mawaqit. And he said that these points are for those who happen to travel to perform either Umrah or Hajj from there, or any person who passes by them from any direction. So let's say that the individual is coming from the States, coming from Europe, coming from any direction. He says that I'm going to transit in Cairo. So his miqat is going to be the same miqat of the Egyptian people and the Sham people, which is, as the Prophet ﷺ appointed, Al-Juhfa, or a place which is known now as Rabigh. Where and how would the person assume the intention of ihram? They would put on the ihram clothes, that's for men of course, before they board the plane, because it will be very difficult to change into the ihram clothes on the plane. Then, before passing by the miqat, normally if it is during the Hajj season, the captain, the pilot, is going to announce who are in line with the miqat, get ready. So once you hear that, you say, لَبَّيْكَ اللَّهُمَّ لَبَّيْكَ لَبَّيْكَ اللَّهُمَّ عُمْرَةً if you're going for Umrah, لَبَّيْكَ اللَّهُمَّ حَجًّا if you're going for Hajj, or both if you're going for both.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, we've got a question again regarding miqat. What if somebody made the ihram, they entered the state of ihram before they actually reached the point of miqat because they were afraid they were going to miss it?
In fact, many people, especially those who are coming from the West, they panic if they're flying to Jeddah airport from any direction and taking a transit. So they prefer to make and assume the intention of ihram earlier, just in case, because that a history of some people who went for Hajj and the pilot didn't announce the miqat. And of course, in this case, they have violated a wajib, which is assuming the intention of ihram from the appointed miqat. And accordingly, they would have to make this up by offering a penalty or a sacrifice, which is slaughtering a sheep to be distributed in Mecca amongst its poor. So, if they tend to say the talbiyah ahead of the appointed place, that's permissible for that reason. So, once they take off from Cairo airport, they start saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik, and this is like an hour and a half before the miqat. That's permissible. The best and the most ideal is to wait until you are in line with the miqat, whether you're flying, sailing, driving, walking. But if people do not have access to verify that, it would be recommended they say the talbiyah ahead of time. That's permissible. But what's prohibited is to postpone the talbiyah until you already pass the miqat.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, we've got a question about a sister who is in her menses, so she's now coming before her ihram time to put on the ihram. She wants to know, how do I go about putting on the ihram?
If before assuming the intention of ihram, a woman experiences the menses, that would not stop her from assuming the intention of ihram, making the talbiyah, making everything that the pilgrim or the mu'tamir would do. As the Prophet ﷺ said to Aisha, do everything that al-hajj would do, the pilgrim would do, except one thing, which is at-tawaf. That includes amongst the things which she may do, assuming the intention of ihram, entering Mecca, going to Mina, standing at Arafah, throwing the stones, etc. Only one thing which will be restricted, at-tawaf, and entering the masjid, al-masjid al-haram, or any other masjid. Then the woman would wait until the period is over and she takes a shower with the intention of removing the major impurity, ghusl. Then now she can do the tawaf and follow it with sa'i, of course. But the ihram would not require cleanness, would not require any specific condition of tahara. But it would be recommended for a woman in this case, even though she's in the middle of her period or menses, to take a shower and to wear what every woman would normally wear, a pad during the menses, and then assume the intention of ihram regularly like everybody else.
Jazakallah. Okay, now we've got a question about somebody hurting an animal. Somebody says, if I hurt an animal, if I kill a kitten or something in Mecca, because unfortunately there are many cats stray there, and you do see this happen, unfortunately. What happens to that person while they're in ihram? Do they have to pay something? Is there a penalty on them?
في سورة المائدة, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated that لا تقتلوا الصيد وأنتم حرم. Don't you kill the game or the hunt, the animals which are normally being hunted, while you are in a state of ihram. And by the way, Mecca as all is a sanctuary. Whether you are in ihram or not, you're not supposed to do that. And there is a penalty if a person, while is in the condition of ihram, kills a sayd. The penalty, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَمَنْ قَتَلَهُ مِنْكُمْ مُتَعَمِّدًا. And whoever does so and kill the animal deliberately, intentionally, فَجَزَاءٌ مِثْلُ مَا قَتَلَ مِنَ النَّعَمِ يَحْكُمُ بِهِ ذَوَى عَدْلٍ مِنْكُمْ هَدْيًا بَالِغَ الْكَعْبَةِ أَوْ كَفَّارَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. Indicating that there is a penalty. The person who kills or hunts an animal while he is in the state of ihram, even if they do not even taste its meat, they will be penalized by a couple of men who are just and wise, who judge the case. And they would measure this animal to another animal which its meat is eatable, such as a cow, a sheep, a goat. And they would say this animal is similar to that, like for instance, a deer similar to a goat. So you need to slaughter a goat, and that meat will be distributed among the poor people of Mecca. But in this condition, that somebody killed a cat, and killing a cat would be, of course, unintentionally. Why would a person kill a cat? It's not for the purpose of hunting. It's by mistake. Whatsoever was done by mistake, it's not being penalized. There is no penalty for that, and a person will just seek the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, Sheikh, we've got a question regarding somebody, a sister making, she's in the state of ihram, and while she's in this state, unfortunately, she cuts some of her hair. Now, it's done by mistake, basically. What's her situation? Does she have to do a penalty as well here? I'm
glad we have such a question, because people, especially those who perform Hajj or Umrah for the very first time, when they read that among the restrictions of ihram, removing any hair, and that's not restricted to the head hair, or no, the beard, the mustache, the eyebrows, even the unwanted hair, such as the armpit and the pubic hair. Once you assume the intention of ihram, one of the restrictions of ihram, clipping nails or removing any hair from the body. That's for both men and women who are in ihram. So they panic, and they think that there is a normal hair fall and drop for every person. Even if you don't scratch your head, even if you don't touch your beard, some hair will drop by itself automatically. That hair does not violate your ihram, because you did not pull it deliberately. You did not intend to shave or to remove the hair. It happened by mistake. People, of course, think also, many people think while you are in ihram, you cannot take a shower. Because when you take a shower and you rub your head, you might drop some hair. Let it drop. Because you did not do it deliberately. You did not exaggerate in rubbing the hair and pulling the hair. So this is a case where it's very important that the question brought up this issue, that a person may take a shower, and may comb his hair, but do not be extravagant. And whatever drops of the hair or hair falls without the intention of pulling the hair is being forgiven. And that does not violate the ihram, and there is no penalty nor ransom for such case.
Jazakallah. We're going to take a question from Brother Hadil from Jordan. And his question is really tied into Hajj, actually. He says, basically, how could you give me some examples on, and tell me really the main difference between a strong believer and a weak believer. And the example he's saying is that, how would you give us some benefit, how would you encourage us to change ourselves to being these strong believers?
Of course, there is a hadith which is a straightforward hadith in that regard. The Prophet ﷺ says that al-mu'minu al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min al-da'if. Wa fi kullin khayr. He says that a strong believer is better and more dearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than a weak one. Yet, they are all good. But we're talking about superiority as a mean of nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being better before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the sight of Allah the Almighty. Strong in what? Strength here refers to the strength in belief, in religious practice, strength of financial strength, physical strength, mental strength. When a person is physically powerful, when a person is capable to do things, when a person is striving hard, he is fulfilling what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained upon him of the ibadat. He is very strong when it comes to offering Salatul Fajr or the night prayer. But he goes to work in the morning and he makes money and he gives in a charity. This is a strong believer. And Shaitan finds it very difficult to overcome such a strong believer. Not only that, and he comes, as the Prophet ﷺ says, وَالْيَدُ الْعُلْيَا خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْيَدِ السُّفْلَى وَابْدَأْ بِمَنْ تَعُولُ, indicating that the upper hand is superior and better before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the lower one. This is a wonderful metaphor. The Prophet ﷺ is referring to the hand which gives in a charity versus the hand which takes, the poor, the beggar, the miskin. So of course, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who gives is superior to the one who takes. And this is an invitation from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not just to settle down and be satisfied with what people give you of the remains of the leftover or charity, but you have to work and work hard so that to be not only satisfied and self-sufficient, but to be rich to give those who are in need. It's an invitation to be proactive. It's a motivation, prophetic motivation, to be powerful and strong in every mean. Of course, while performing Hajj and while performing Umrah, that would require physical ability. Those who are able to perform tawaf and those who are able to do sa'i would find it very easy, much accessible than those who are complaining, have knee problems, those who cannot walk, handicapped, and so on. But we also are required to assist and help those who cannot walk on foot, or those who find it difficult to walk, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this power as a mean of test, to test us whether we're going to be thankful and grateful to Allah or not, and whether we're going to use this power in helping and assisting others or not.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, we've got a question about the day of Arafat here. The sister says, basically, when I go back to India, the day of Arafat, or the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah in Saudi, will be the 7th or 8th day of Dhul Hijjah in India. So what do I do regarding my fast? What advice can you give us on fasting, the days that we need to fast, basically?
This is really a very, very important question, which we used to face in North America a lot. Now that goes back to the same point of differences between the scholars concerning the beginning of Ramadan. There are two main schools of thoughts in that regard. One school which they consider the unity of the crescent, by the meaning, they say that if the crescent or the moon has been sighted, the moon citation has been sighted anywhere in the world, they believe that there is only one moon, which is true, that's a fact. So if it's been sighted in Cairo, that means it's already been born. So the neighbor countries, such as Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Syria, etc., they don't have to bother and make an effort. If they couldn't see the moon because of a cloud, or because of darkness or smoke, it's been already sighted. So everybody should follow the first country which sighted the moon, based on the fact that the Prophet ﷺ said, صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. And based on the same hadith, the other school of thought relied on, well, we could not sight the moon ourselves. And we are an independent country, or an independent nation. And of course, in the past, that the Meccans wouldn't have an access via phones or cell phones or satellite to know whether the Medina people have sighted the moon or not. And you can imagine the difference, the time difference, and how many hundreds of miles they have to travel before they get to know about each other. So they said that each country has its own independent moon sightation. And these two opinions are both valid. While we have to keep in mind one thing. The most important fact that we should really rely on the moon sightation, not on the calculation. For instance, this year, North Americans, Muslims in North America, followed the calculations of NASA, etc., which they began fasting the same day in which countries have or were able to sight the crescent. That's good. If the calculations coincide and matches the moon sightation, that's perfectly fine. But what if it does not match and does not coincide the moon sightation? We give precedence to the moon sightation because this is an act of worship. Actually, sighting the moon in the beginning of the Islamic month, especially Ramadan, of course the month of Dhul Hijjah as well, is an act of worship. Sighting the moon is an act of worship. So we give precedence to sighting the moon. Same thing applies to the issue of the day of Arafah, that one of my family members and one of your family members have gone to perform Hajj from India, from Pakistan, from North America, from the Arab countries. They are all following the country which has the Kaaba, right? The Holy Lands. So if they say, tomorrow is the 9th day of the month of Dhul Hijjah, then there, tomorrow is the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah. If other countries rely on the moon sightation in this country, that solves the problem. But if they do not, and if this is their practice during Ramadan and during the month of Dhul Hijjah, and say, we sight the moon by our own selves, and they could not sight the crescent or the moon, then if you follow them, you're perfectly fine. Unless if they say that we only rely on calculations, because calculations, it does not have any presence in this act of worship, unless if it confirms the process of the moon sightation. So if your country said that we could not sight the moon, while the Saudis said that we've sighted the moon, and tomorrow is the 9th, and the 9th actually is going to be day after tomorrow, and in some countries 2 days difference, minus or plus. So if you follow your country and fast on the 9th, that should suffice you, inshaAllah. While it will be best if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring this entire ummah in the east and the west, in every corner on the globe. And they say that if the moon has been sighted anywhere, let's all begin fasting. And we see that the representatives of the entire Muslim nation coming from every corner on the globe observing the day of Arafah on the 9th day. So I'm telling them, no, today is not the 9th day. It will be best if we can all fast for those who are not performing Hajj, because the Prophet ﷺ says that observing fasting on the day of Arafah removes the sins of the past year and a year to come. Is an expiation for one's mistakes and sins for 2 years, the past year and a year to come. But if the country which you are living at, whether it's India, North America, China, they said, no, our 9th is such and such, and you're following the same routine in Ramadan, then if you follow them, fasting on the 9th day, according to their estimation, counts as fasting the day of Arafah as well.
Jazakallah Shaykh. Okay, we have the second question from the sister, and it's regarding a situation in India. Basically, she says there's no Islamic banks around. We all put our money into interest-bearing bank accounts. How do we go about dispersing, giving this money away? And we know we don't get no ajr for this, but how do we go about giving this money away? Can I give this money away to a good cause, like, for example, my sister who's in need of money as her daughter is very ill, she needs some money for an operation. Can I give it away to this kind of charity?
Of course, Muslims in this case are advised to find a way of investing their money, because the value of the money decreases if you just save your money in saving accounts, or even if you put it in an interest-based account, and of course you're not taking the interest because it's haram, the value of your money decreases. So it will be best if you find any means of lawful investment. And I truly advise all the good Muslims not just to save their money, because saving the money is a loss. You encounter a great loss. The value of the money decreases year after another year. While if you buy a property, if you invest in real estate, if you invest in gold, if you invest in this and that, it's a subject of loss or profit, but the money is moving. But anyway, the scholar said that if you happen to be in a country where there is no Muslim bank, and all the banks are only interest-based, and you have some money, which of course you're not going to save it beneath your pillow. You have to save it in a safe, in a bank. You are permitted, it's permissible to do so, with the condition that you don't take that interest. And if you take it, it doesn't go into your pocket. You do not spend any of that money on yourself, on your family members, even on your clothing. Rather, you should get rid of it. And this is not an act of charity. There is no reward in giving this in a charity. It's just a means of getting rid of filth. It's like a cancer. Once the cancer has been removed, you're getting rid of filth. So I advise you, I understand that in the West even banks tend to give no interest-based accounts. And this is good for them. So if you can bargain from the beginning and agree to have a non-interest-based account, that's perfectly fine. If not, then once you take this interest, if they force you to take it, you have to get rid of it. In any means other than giving it to family members or a masajid. Perhaps you can give it to schools, roads, fixing the facilities of the properties of the masjid outside, but not in the masjid itself.
Jazakallah. Okay, we've got another question regarding Hajj again. What's the opinion, or is anybody allowed or exempt from performing the Tawaf al-Wada'? Is there anybody at all?
First of all, we have to know that whether Tawaf al-Wada' is mandatory or not. Tawaf al-Wada' is a wajib. Okay? But in some cases, this wajib, when we say wajib, means it's mandatory. That means everybody who comes for Hajj, and according to the right opinion, also for Umrah, that applies in both cases, in Hajj and in Umrah, must perform Tawaf al-Wada'. But what if a person cannot do it? Such as women during their menses. A woman who have done Tawaf al-Ifada already, upon returning back from Arafah. Then her menses started. This woman is exempted from doing Tawaf al-Wada'. And when I say exempted, I mean that she will not be penalized. She does not have to make up this Tawaf by giving any penalty or ransom or charity at all. She will just leave smoothly without having to do anything instead of Tawaf al-Wada'. At-Tawaf is Salah which requires Tahara, requires wudu. You can never pray without wudu. And when a woman is having the menses, she abstains from praying, from entering the masjid, and so on. Similarly, she would abstain from performing Tawaf. So in this case, if she had done Tawaf al-Ifada, that should be sufficient. And this is the same case which took place with Safiya, the mother of the believers, when the Prophet ﷺ learned that she had the menses. He said that, is she going to hold us here? When he knew that she had performed Tawaf al-Ifada, he said, then let's go. What would really hold her back, or could have held her back, is Tawaf al-Ifada, because this is a pillar. I mean, Hajj without one of its pillars is no Hajj. It's not redeemable. You can never make it up. You cannot assign any person to do it on your behalf. So as-Salah, al-Tawaf, you cannot appoint no one to do it on your behalf. But a woman during her menses, if she's done Tawaf al-Ifada, now she may leave without a need to perform Tawaf al-Wada' and without a need for any penalty, a ransom, or a sacrifice. The second condition where a person, whether a man or a woman, will be exempted from Tawaf al-Wada' and they may leave without performing Tawaf al-Wada' if they postpone Tawaf al-Ifada. If they postpone Tawaf al-Ifada to be the last activity, even if they follow it by the sa'i. So the person makes tawaf right now, and the bus is waiting, the cab is waiting, and he does the sa'i, and he goes to his hotel, to his room, and collects his luggages, and he leaves. Such person does not have to do another tawaf, tawaf al-wada'. That will be understood when a person knows what is the meaning of tawaf al-wada'. Wada' means a farewell. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith that a person who's coming to perform either Hajj or Umrah should make his last activity, last commitment, is to do tawaf. So if the person is coming to perform Umrah or Hajj, must do tawaf. Let's say that a person came to perform Umrah, and briefly he performed tawaf and sa'i, and he shortened or trimmed his hair. And now he's ready to leave. Does he owe another tawaf al-wada'? No. Because actually it's all connected and he's leaving right away.
Jazakallah. So what about the person, for example, who makes Hajj, does his tawaf al-wada', he has to leave now, for example. Is he allowed to return back to Mecca? Is there any time period at all for him?
If the person left the sanctuary of Mecca and did not do tawaf al-wada' and he is not coming back, that would be penalized by slaughtering a sheep.
Okay.
And in this case, he does not have to go back to do it himself. He can actually appoint. So the issue of giving the fidya can be by appointing others to do it on their behalf.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, we've got a situation here where somebody breaks one of the restrictions of ihram. What penalty lies for that person, Shaykh?
Well, it depends, because sometimes you do it out of forgetfulness, out of ignorance. Such as, because I was not used to sit and just wear these two towels, the rida and izar. Okay. So I forget and I wear my kufi, my cap, my head cover. Then another brother said, what are you doing? They don't go along, they don't match. Ihram and the cap. Oh, I was reminded. So the kafara, the ransom for that is to take it off. Because a man during his ihram must not cover his head, nor face, of course. So you would do that and take it off. That is the ransom for that mistake. But if a person does anything deliberately, he's committing a sin. And he's being penalized. There is penalty for that. But there is a very unique case when sometimes a person has to make the violation due to a necessity or an emergency. Such as the case of Ka'b ibn Ujrah, may Allah be pleased with him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَحْلِقُوا رُؤُوسَكُمْ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْهَدْيُ مَحِلَّهُ. You should not shave your heads before the hadi has been sacrificed or the offering has been done. What does it mean? Shaving, trimming, or removing any hair is one of the 9 restrictions of ihram. As long as you're in ihram, you cannot shave, nor clip, or remove any hair. But our companion had lice in his head. The Prophet ﷺ saw him in this condition. He said, I didn't know that it was hurting you that much. He said, go ahead and shave. Because the first prescription in treatment of lice is to shave. Go ahead and shave. Well, this is one of the restrictions of ihram. So he was allowed to shave. And he gave him the option between one of 3 things to do as a mean of penalty or a ransom. Which is, فَصِيَامٌ فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ بِهِ آدَمْ مِنْ رَأْسِهِ فَفِدْيَةٌ. The fidya min صِيَامٍ أَوْ صَدَقَةٍ أَوْ نُسُكٍ. الصِّيَام by fasting for 3 days. الصَّدَقَةِ by feeding 6 masakeen. Each person approximately half sa', as we discussed before, like 1.5 kilogram of, the average food what people eat. 6 poor people of the Meccans. The third option is to slaughter a sheep, to be slaughtered in Mecca, to be distributed amongst the poor people who live there or happen to be there. And in this case, the person would have the choice between one of the 3. Either فَصِيَامٌ فَفِدْيَةٌ مِّن صِيَامٍ أَوْ صَدَقَةٍ أَوْ نُسُكٍ. This is the Quranic statement. Some people would give the fatwa, right away you have to slaughter. This is not necessarily true. You'll be given the option to do whatever you can afford of the 3 penalties or the 3 means of ransom. That if the person has to. A person whom physician said to him that you cannot wear the ihram. You have to wear the trousers. You have to wear an underwear. Same thing. He would wear them, and he is in a state of ihram, wearing the ihram on the rest of his clothes, and he would be given the choice to choose whichever penalty suits him, and that would make it up, inshallah.
Jazakallah. So I've got a little side point here. What if somebody, say for example, breaks his nail, for example, and it's there, and he removes that nail. He breaks it by mistake and then removes it because of some injury, or just because it's there and it's an obstacle.
Same thing, because clipping the nails is one of mahzurat al-ihram. If I have to, I may do it, because I have to, I broke my nail. And there is a penalty, which is, you see, the issue of al-ihram keeps the muhrim on high alert. He's very attentive now. He knows what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him to restrain and to abstain from. The issue of clipping the nails, removing the hair, shaving or trimming, wearing cologne or perfume, wearing my regular clothes is lawful throughout the entire time. But in a state of ihram, Allah is telling you that you're on mine. You're making talbiyah, respond after respond. You're on high alert. That you know that Allah says, do not do that, so you do not do it. But it's not the end of the world. If you have to do it, go ahead and do it. But there is a penalty for it.
Jazakallah for all those clarifications. We're going to go to a short break, inshallah, return in a couple of minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa
barakatuh. Now reaching every corner of the world, watch Huda via live streaming on www.huda.tv. The world of Islam at your fingertips. Huda, a light in every home.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ask Huda. Okay, just going to remind you again, please do not telephone us. Today's episode is all about the questions, so please do not telephone, don't go in, because no one's going to be answering the calls today. Okay, Sheikh, I've got a question here regarding the Islamic ruling on mourning the death, basically. What's the Islamic guidelines? The brother says here in India, we feed the poor, we feed people who come to visit us, we have some rituals on the 2nd day, the 10th day, the 40th day. What's necessary, what's not, what's correct?
First of all, we have to learn what is the meaning of mourning. Some people think mourning is by wearing black, which is a misconception. Some people think that mourning is avoiding eating certain food or doing some rituals. First of all, the Prophet ﷺ said that it's not permissible for any person to mourn the death of any person for more than 3 days. So the maximum period of mourning, of being sad, of avoiding any means of joy, delight and happiness, 3 days. Even if the person is your son, is your brother, is your dad, all of us are going to die. Except in one case, a wife mourning the death of her husband. As we mentioned in the first part, that the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَالَّذِينَ يُتَوَفَّوْنَ مِنْكُمْ وَيَذَرُونَ أَزْوَاجًا يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ أَرْبَعَةَ أَشْهُرٍ وَعَشْرًا 4 months and 10 days. And that of course shows the strong relationship between the spouses, the husband and wife. So that the woman would not mourn her father, the death of her father, for more than 3 days. But she would show sadness and sorrow for 4 months and 10 days for the death of her husband. Anyway, that's simply by avoiding wearing the clothes which would show the delight and happiness. But there is no specific outfit. There is no specific color for it. A woman would avoid the zina, the adornment, the makeup, stuff like that, even amongst her maharim. But any other rituals which are imported from other traditions and other nations and other religions are prohibited, such as they make certain food on certain days, on the 10th, on the 40s, that's all prohibited. As the Prophet ﷺ said in the sound hadith, which is narrated by al-Mu'mineen, the mother of the believers, Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, مَنْ أَحْدَثَ فِي أَمْرِنَا هَذَا مَا لَيْسَ مِنْهُ فَهُوَ رَدٌّ. Whosoever introduces a new innovation into this matter of ours, the religion, this act would be rejected. Simply would not be just left alone, not accepted, it would be rejected. A person would be committing a sin. And he named that as innovation. And he also said in another hadith, وَكُلُّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ. And every new thing that's introduced in our religious practice is an innovation. وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. And every innovation leads astray, and it ends up in fire. So the Muslim must avoid all of that. We do not recognize the 10th, the 40s, or any celebrations or commemoration of the remembrance of any deceased, including the Prophet ﷺ or any of his companions. You love them so much, and of course that would take us to another important issue, which is the husbands and the wives. Every person must write down in his will before his death that I would like my beloved family members to follow strictly the guidelines of the Quran and the Sunnah, as how to bury my body, how to wash my body, how to wrap me in the coffin, how to bury me, what to do after my burial, and so on. And if he has wealth, he would also write down as how to distribute my wealth, and it will be best if he says that according to ilm al-fara'id, or the sharia what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained. If he has a wasiyah to give in a charity here or there, it should not exceed 1/3, as the Prophet ﷺ has said. But you will be exempting yourself from any blame or punishment when you say that I'm free from any mispractice or misdoing you do out of love, as people claim. The celebrations which they do on the graveyard, on certain occasions, sometimes on the Eid day, on the Eid morning, these are all acts of innovations which the Prophet ﷺ prohibited us from doing. So in Islam, mourning is by avoiding wearing the clothes and the makeup which show happiness. But let us say that for the death of any person, what do we have to do as neighbors, as friends? It's totally the opposite of what's been practiced now. The Prophet ﷺ, upon the death of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, said, اصنعوا لآل جعفر طعاما. Fix a food for the people of Ja'far, for his wife and kids. Why? They are too busy today, mourning the death of their man, of Ja'far. What people do today is totally the opposite. The family is being grieved and being afflicted by the loss of their beloved father, son, or husband, and they have to feed the guests, those who are coming to give the condolence. This is totally wrong.
It's so far astray nowadays that they invite you for these practices of reading Quran for the deceased, and they have to finish the Quran once every day, and it goes on for a week. Rather than going back to the Sunnah, is this something which we find is in all societies, Sheikh, or was this something which is new, basically? That these kind of innovations, especially when it comes to burial.
Since Islam expanded and the Muslim state grew up, we had people accepted Islam from the Persian Empire, from the Byzantine Empire, from the Hindus background. So those people inoculated into Islamic tradition some of their old traditions and fashions, believing that this is good to do, and out of love. As Shaitan also tempted them and whispered to them to approve that as means of righteousness. While the fact of the matter is that if you follow strictly the guidelines of the deen, you will be on the safe side. If you're not sure, ask. For instance, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that whenever the servant of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala dies, nothing would help him after his death except 3 things. A continuous charity, a useful knowledge which he left behind to benefit people, or a righteous son who's going to pray for him. That applies to daughters as well, grandsons and granddaughters. So what would really benefit my beloved dad, my mom, my husband, my wife, is a sincere supplication. People make certain gatherings and they distribute 1 para, 1 juz on each person, and say, let's make what's called khatma. I have to find out whether this been prescribed by the Prophet ﷺ or not, whether it's been approved or not. So when we trace that and we try to locate it anywhere in the Quran or in the Sunnah, it has no existence. It does not exist. So those who practice that would say, and those whom Ash-Shaytan made it seem fair to them, they say that, yeah, it does not exist, but it's a good thing to do. Who judges the case? Who's supposed to say it's a good thing or it's a bad thing? The Prophet ﷺ was the messenger of Allah who conveyed to us everything that Allah wanted us to know. It's not included. Then it should not be practiced. Because Allah and His Messenger, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam conveyed the entire message with truthfulness, with honesty and trustworthiness.
Jazakallah. Okay, coming to the end of this question, the brother asks, what if Eid falls within this time that somebody dies, for example, and then the close relatives like the son, daughters, should they celebrate? Are they allowed to mourn in the Eid days, or do they have to celebrate these Eid days?
Of course, they're allowed to mourn. They don't have to, but celebrating the Eid is not necessarily about making a party. And mourning is mainly by the heart. And mourning, which is settled in the heart, reflects on the person's behavior, on the person's conversation, on the person's talk, on the person's appearance. And it's only for 3 days, no matter whether the dead person was a father, whether a brother, whether a son, as long as he's not a husband.
Jazakallah. Okay, we've got a question from Brother Rizwan, who says, can you tell me the history or the relevance really of, he's written it down in his Rukn al-Yamani on the Kaaba. So if you can tell us some background to this part of the Kaaba.
Simply, when we say Al-Rukn al-Yamani and we say Al-Hajar al-Aswad, Al-Rukn al-Yamani is the pillar of the Kaaba, one of the 4 main pillars of the Kaaba, of the original foundations, which Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, along with his son Ismail, constructed the Kaaba on those foundations. وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَاعِيلُ رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. And remember when Ibrahim and his son Ismail were raising the foundations of the Bayt, of the ancient house. Al-Rukn al-Yamani was called so because it points towards Al-Yaman. It points towards Al-Yaman. And there is Al-Shami and there is Al-Iraqi based on whichever direction it faces. The most important of all is Al-Rukn, which contains the black stone, Al-Hajar al-Aswad. The black stone is a stone that came down from heaven. It came down from heaven. The Prophet ﷺ once touched by his lips, and of course without making the noise of the kiss. And he said that if you can receive it by your right hand and say Allahu Akbar, fine. If you can't, then you may point to it from far away, as you're warming your hand before fire. Say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and you go on. Al-Rukn al-Yamani is also recommended to receive it or touch it by your right hand, but not to kiss it. See the difference between Al-Rukn al-Yamani and Al-Hajar al-Aswad. Al-Rukn al-Yamani is the corner that precedes the black stone corner immediately. It's so adjacent to it, and it precedes it. There is nothing in between. Okay? One side of the Kaaba, here is Al-Rukn al-Yamani and here is the black stone. So in the case of Al-Rukn al-Yamani, you touch it by your right hand, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and you go on your way. What if you cannot touch it? You're not going to do what we did in the case of Al-Hajar al-Aswad. You're going to skip it, not point even. You don't even point from far away. Pointing is specifically for the black stone corner, in case that you cannot touch it by your hand nor kiss it.
Jazakallah. And you answered the second question, brother's asking, do we have to raise our hands towards it? We've answered that, so that's excellent. Okay, we've got a question regarding somebody in a state of ihram who has a wet dream. Now, what do they do? What's their situation? How do they find themselves?
I find it weird to while being involved in this environment of spirituality and religious emotions, to have a wet dream, because a wet dream will be due to thinking of that while awake. But yet, if it happens, you're going to treat it like you are outside Al-Haram. Get up in the morning or whenever you find that, and take a shower with the intention of removing the major impurity, yani performing ghusl, right? And wudu, of course, and pray right away. But we have to alert some of the audience and the viewers that wet dream cannot be verified unless you see the sexual discharge or its traces. But just having in your mind that you had a wet dream and there is no sexual discharge, there is no sign for it, that's not a wet dream. And it would not require any ghusl.
Jazakallah. Okay, we've got a question regarding What's the benefit, what's the purpose of al-ittiba' and ramal?
Al-ittiba' wal-ramal. Al-ittiba' wal-ramal are two Arabic words referring to the two traditions which the pilgrims are supposed to perform in their very first tawaf, which is known as Tawaf al-Qudum, or the arrival tawaf. Whether the person is performing Umrah in any time of the year or coming to perform Umrah and Hajj. So he begins by the Umrah, of course. The very first tawaf is known as Tawaf al-Qudum, the arrival tawaf. This tawaf will be distinguished from the rest of the tawafs, which we discussed before, by doing two things. As sunan, they do not affect the validity of the tawaf if the person could not do it or did not even do it deliberately. Al-ittiba' wal-ramal. Al-ittiba' is to uncover the right shoulder. As we see in the videos people perform in Hajj. They uncover the right shoulder, that's for men. And they bring the end of the rida to wrap it around the left shoulder, leaving the right shoulder uncovered. Throughout the 7 rounds of the very first tawaf, and once the tawaf is over, they straighten the rida to cover both shoulders. What we see from some people that praying sunnat at-tawaf, keeping the right shoulder being uncovered, is wrong. And I advise the viewers who are going to perform Umrah or Hajj at any day not to hesitate to give the sincere advice, because those people do not know. So our role is to enjoin what's right and forbid what's evil. Especially the Prophet ﷺ prohibited a person from praying without covering his shoulders. Same thing, it is very strange to see people, and actually a magnitude of people, making sa'i while uncovering the right shoulder. Why is that? This is ibadah related only to the very first tawaf. What is the story of that? Let me also mention al-ramal first. Al-ramal is to walk briskly, and that's for men only as well. Only in the first 3 rounds. Knowing the history would clarify why do we have to do that. Of course, in the 6th year after Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ had a dream that he performed Umrah and he entered Mecca and so on. So he motivated his companions, and approximately 1,400 of them joined the Prophet ﷺ in the year to perform Umrah. But the Meccans did not allow them, so they came outside in a place called Al-Hudaybiyah, and the Meccans reached to a truce with the Muslims that they will go back and they would not perform Umrah this year. Then the rest of the elements or the articles of the treaty, which is known as Sulh al-Hudaybiyah. Next year, they came to perform Umrah and they only had 3 days. Okay? Coming from Al-Madinah, they were sick, and most of them had fever, and they were worn out due to the journey, and there was no time to rest. So the Meccans climbed the mountains to watch closely how much the Muslims would suffer after this long journey, being so exhausted. That's laughable. So they wanted to mock at, to make fun of the Muslims who are very, very weak, and they are going to do the manasik as well. So the Prophet ﷺ ordered the companions to uncover the right shoulder as a sign of strength, and to jog or walk briskly. Of course, the point or the purpose was fulfilled. So when the Meccans noticed that the Muslims are actually jogging, they're very strong. So they said to one another, are those the same people whom you said that they're weak and sick? Look at that. And then the Prophet ﷺ felt pity for the Muslims and said, mission been accomplished. Now walk slowly. Walk normally. Now there is no unbelievers, idolaters in Mecca. Why do you have to do that? At-tashri' or legislations is not limited to a certain time. Same thing with shortening our prayer. It was actually prescribed due to being unsafe, unsecure, afraid of the disbelievers might rob you, interrupt your journey. So that's why you're allowed to pray shortly. But this is a gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given us. So it's extended throughout until the Day of Judgment. Okay? Same thing among the traditions which the companions have memorized and practiced from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam after his death even is al-ittiba' and al-ramal. I'm confirming once again, these two practices are only in the very first tawaf. And after that, there is no ittiba' whatsoever.
Jazakallah Shaykh. Okay, we've got another issue that we find in people while making tawaf, and this is the shouting of certain slogans that they do while making Tawaf, and while sometimes they're doing Hajj, which are not your normal kind of slogans that you see we are supposed to be saying, for example, keeping it to ourselves. So what's the situation here today?
This is completely refused and totally wrong. Whether it is political slogans or religious slogans, because we're not walking in a protest or a demonstration. I'm walking in Tawaf or in Sa'i to demonstrate my compliance, my sincerity. I say to the brothers and sisters whose mother tongue not Arabic, they do not know any supplication. Communicate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from your heart. Say whatever you want to say in your own language. Supplicate, praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recite whatever you've memorized of the Quran, pray for yourself, for your family members, for your daughters, for your sons, for your husband, for your wife. But what some people do, following blindly one person who's shouting, repeating slogans, sometimes, if not most of the cases, they do not even have any clue what the person is saying.
So how?
It is very, very amazing and very weird to hear somebody saying, Allahumma ikhzini, may Allah forgive us, while he's supposed to say ajirni, because the dots are being misplaced, or he mispronounced it. And the meaning is completely wrong. It is totally the opposite. Ajirni, protect me, and ikhzini, humiliate me and disgrace me. So why don't you communicate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from your heart? Brothers and sisters, there is nothing called a specific supplication for each round at all. We have not memorized anything that the Prophet or his companions taught us, which you read in yellow pages, and those books which are authored by people like us have no basis. So what do you do? Except for only one supplication that the Prophet ﷺ used to repeat regularly between Ar-Rukn al-Yamani and the Black Stone, which is رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Our Lord, grant us a goodly reward في الدنيا, in this life, وفي الآخرة, grant us a goodly reward in the hereafter, وقنا عذاب النار, and protect us against the torment of fire. Yes. Other than that, any dua, any supplication from your heart. And I really kindly request those who act as leaders and start shouting slogans, even if it is religious, to be quiet, to allow those who would like to communicate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have a peace of mind to do that at comfort.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. That's wonderful advice. And with that, we have to leave you today. We're running out of time. So until the next time, I leave you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.